off camera, I put a center line down through here, and I also marked the location of the holes. I've used the laser cutter to cut out some of the Osage orange dots, and that's what we're going to inlay in here. I just think it would be too fidgety to try to put this in the machine and cut the holes with the machine. The machine is only designed to be 12 inches long. This is by far much bigger, and I can't think of a good way to get it in there, even by modifying the machine. So I'm just not ready to do that yet, and so this is what we're going with. And in case you're wondering, the tape is just so I wouldn't accidentally drill these two holes with this bit, because I'm putting smaller dots in there. We're just about ready to profile this to the neck, and then we'll have to bind this. There's just a lot of work to be done yet. And there, my friends, is what it looks like all cleaned up. I think that looks real nice myself. Well, I've been doing the nerdy math. I want to leave this fretboard as wide as I can keep it because the customer wants a little wider fretboard. I should have asked him ahead of time exactly how wide he wanted it, because I think I'm still going to be a little bit shy of what he's wanting. It's still going to be a little bit wider than standard, but not much. I want to make some special binding for this fretboard, and I've got some of the binding that I made for the guitar body, but it's a little bit thick. This is 60 thousandths of an inch, and I would like to take it down to about 40 thousandths. I also suspect that Colin struck again. He told me to be watching for something, and this just came in the mail, and it's very awesome. Thank you very much, Colin. I really appreciate it. And because Colin is on the metric system, let's see, we're at 60 thousandths right now. And the metric side of that is 1.54 millimeter. I want to take it down to about 40 thousandths. We're going down to just about 1 millimeter. Well, there we did it. We're at 41 thousandths of an inch, which would just be a hair over a millimeter. That is some thin wood, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to do too much to break that. But that's going to be the edging around here. And of course, we're going to also sandwich a piece of yellow. So we got to make the yellow now. There's many ways to do this. Most of the time, they're just straight across. I'm going to make this one a little more decorative than that, just because I can. It doesn't take that much more work. So I'm just going to make this one follow the sound hole. That's assuming I can get my big hand in here and get this drawn under here. We have the thickness of the binding to account for, so we're going to have to add that, or subtract it, I guess, whichever way you want to think of it. And so the line will actually be back here a little bit. Hopefully you can see that there is a little gap back there, and binding should fit in that slot pretty well. If you've watched many of my videos, you've probably seen this clamp before, and it's the clamp I use to put mandolin necks in here and then work on the peg head. Well, you know, had I been thinking when I made it, I would have made this to fit guitars and then adapted it down to mandolins. Wasn't thinking that way, but I did make an adapter to turn the mandolin neck upside down, and that way I could put the flat part here rather than the curved part, and then I could work on it upside down as well. So I got to thinking, well, maybe I could just make an adapter for this to fit guitar necks. So I came up with this, and you know, it seems to work great so far. And you know, I can just put the guitar neck in here, and then I need to put something on here to keep it from, you know, making a mark or anything, so I could just put any kind of a piece of wood there. Trick is you got to get it up here far enough that the router base won't get in the way if you're going to be routing the peg head. That's pretty darn solid. Yeah, there's some movement there, but not much really. It's the flex in this steel is the only movement that I really have. And that's not too bad. I could put a stiffener here to take out that little bit of flex, but it doesn't seem to bother me much. I spent pretty much all afternoon yesterday making this attachment to my Proxxon router base. It's just a slide-in deal that slides up to this blade, and this part right here, the round part, follows the contour of the part here, and then it's offset and the blade does the cutting, and this cuts the binding slot. I've used it on practice pieces already. It seems to be cutting exactly what I want. So it's time to cut the binding slot for this peg head on this guitar. Here we go. I might also add that people say you're not supposed to run the router the wrong way, or you're only supposed to go where the bit is cutting in. If you go backwards, you'll find that it doesn't cut out so much. Yes, it makes the router climb, but if you don't let it take a big bite, if you're in control of it and you know it's going to do that, then you just take a light pass and it won't tear out anything. It makes a nice cut that way. And anyway, it works great for me. That's the technique I use. So that's why I go the wrong way, and I do it on purpose. Then of course, before I go any further, I'm just going to do a sanity check here. I believe it's going to be fine. Yeah, that looks absolutely perfect, really. It couldn't be much better. It's still a little bit proud to the surface, but that's what I want. On the bottom side, it's absolutely slick. You can't even feel it. So that's just perfect. Now we're going to route up here, and when I get up to this end, I'm going to stop short and finish the corners by hand. Because if you go up there, then you'll just make a mess, and then it's really hard to fix. And so it's better to stop short of getting to the corner. In my opinion, that was a huge win, and I really like this Proxxon base, especially with this attachment on there that I made. That really works great. It's very easy to adjust and very controllable. This is going to be difficult for you to see because I'm going to work on this side over here closer to me, but I'll show you what I'm doing over here. I'm just cutting down and cutting down. And across this way too. So I've got to cut this chunk of wood out, and I've got to cut it out square. Again, if you've watched a lot of my videos, you've seen a lot of different techniques for binding things and different ways of holding it. I use tape sometimes. This wooden binding, and on something like this, I don't feel like the tape is strong enough to make these tight bends and stuff and get a good tight. So I'm going to use the binding cloth again and wrap around it this time on this. So you can't do as much this way. You can only do like one side at a time, and it takes longer with this, but I think I do a better job. And this is the area that people are going to be looking at, so I've just got to make sure it's a good job. I've wet the two ends of this because this first bend is actually pretty hard for wooden binding. So I've wet these down. They've actually started drying already by now, but I used hot water, and I think that softened them a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and get the glue in here. This fretboard has been drying for a couple of days actually. I've still got to put this on, but before I put this on, I want to clean the back of this up. It's pretty flat, but I just want to scrape it and make sure it's, you know, no glue, and get it as flat as I can. The top still needs quite a bit of work. I'm not worried about the top yet until I get this part done. Under the microscope, the joint looks pretty much airtight, so to the naked eye, it's got to be real good. The truth is, the microscope was very helpful in this, but when it got right down to the last part of fitting it up, I just took it out and did it by eye and checked it under the scope, and everything looks really good. I don't have a good way to clamp this, and because of that, I think I'm just going to use CA glue on this because I don't think I could, you know, I'm just going to have to hold it by hand. I'll just put some gloves on, and I think that's the best way to do it. Folks have commented over the years that I should be using a radius block to sand the fretboard. And I would say back to them, no, you should be using a radius block when you sand a fretboard. I don't have any problem keeping a radius in a fretboard with a flat block. Does an artist use a round brush or pencil when he's drawing a circle? No, he's got a straight piece of lead and he draws a circle. I've got a straight board and I draw a circle down this fretboard as I go. I have no problem whatsoever maintaining the radius with a flat board. This will give you a good idea of the curl in the wood. Shows it off really well. You can see all the curl, and so it's going to look beautiful when a finish gets applied to this. Now the finish will be applied to the side, but it won't be applied to the top. We'll just oil the top. But that'll give you some idea what it's going to look like when it's finished. And you can see the white and yellow binding there, and then the end up there, how it worked out. I'm pretty darn happy with it. Couldn't be too much better, I don't think. I used the laser cutter to cut out some little tiny Paducah Dots. I did a lot of testing, you know, off camera, and they should fit pretty tightly. So here we go. That worked pretty darn well. Of course, they're still ugly right now. They have to be sanded and cleaned up, but I think it's going to be fine. Got the medium guitar fret wire from Stu Mac here. I am notching out the ends to go over the binding. There's a lot of different ways to do this. The way I do it, a little slower probably, but it doesn't waste any wire. It's got rough edges on it, and that's what gets driven down in the slot. And we're going to cut off the end of that under part, that tang that goes in the slot. We're cutting off a piece of that because the top of the fret has to overhang the binding on the edge. These cutters here have a little cutter right there, and it just nips off this tang, and hopefully you can see it here. And now there you can, whoops, it's hard to hold it because it's spinning in my hand, but hopefully you can see where it has nipped off the tang there on the end. Got some more of that good old country boy logic for you. We're now on the very last fret. It's taken a little while to get there. Just think how much faster we would have finished if we would have started on the last fret and did it first. So next time you have a repetitive project that needs a lot of repetition, think about that and start on the last one first and you'll get finished right away. Just rounding over the very ends of the frets. Well, the binding is pretty dry. I wouldn't say it's 100% dry, but it's good enough to work on, I think. Maybe now for the first time we can start to see how it's coming together. I'm very pleased. It's just sitting there obviously, but there's your peg head, your neck and binding and everything. And then how it comes down to this and matches the circle. I think that's pretty cool. And of course the sides and this little armrest or arm relief. I'm very pleased with it so far. It's just really turning out very, very nice. We're just about to wind this project down, but before I put this neck on the guitar, I want to finish up the truss rod. And I've got a little magnet here. I've stuck the truss rod in as far down in there as I can get it to go. And then I slide the magnet on here and see where it makes contact. And I think the magnet is sliding up past the end of this, if I'm not mistaken. I think it is. It's hard to tell that, but it looks like it is to me. So I really want to be, the bottom edge of this magnet is probably about where I think we should be. And that's just kind of a guess. It's kind of an eyeball thing. You just kind of decide, does that look okay? And I think it does. I think we're going to go with that as the starting point at least. I mean, we've got room that if we need to, we could move back that way, but I don't think we'll need to. I think that's about right. You know, it's a good distance from here, and I like to have a little meat there. I don't like to get way up here and cut the hole because I think that weakens it a little bit more even. Obviously, here is another place you could mess up everything, but I feel very good about using this by hand. I feel like I've got good control. I've used it so much over the years. I know what to expect. This Dremel tool provides an excellent grip, so I've got a good firm hold on it. And so I can just get down here and very lightly work my way into this. I'm going to turn the RPMs about 20,000 to start with, and we'll move faster or slower depending on how it feels. That's definitely really small right now. I like to start off small and sneak up on it, like I like to say. I believe there may be a little glue or something in there that's kind of blocking the way. I put on a smaller bit. I've got the hole cleaned out real nice. It fits in there real easy now. I've got about a 1/4 inch sticking through. I'm deciding how long and where I want this to go. I like to have the end of this in the meatiest part of the heel, which is about right here. Just roughly there. So I'm going to put a mark on there and cut it off right there. to you, that's not the best way to do brazing, but it works, and if you're patient, and if the other part of your shop is really cold where you don't feel like messing with the brazing torch in there, then you use this. And as long as the parts are small, you can braze, and that's sufficient for our purposes. It's just to keep that nut from ever spinning. I just took the Dremel tool and worked out a spot for that nut, and you can see here the end comes out. We're going to work on that a little bit because there's not enough room to get a nut and a washer on there yet, but we got a good start on it. Now the first thing I do before I go any further is I'm going to put my bend in this bar now that I've got it situated the way I want it. Some people may think these truss rods are straight, but they're really not. At least this type is not. And you know, I just try to hold it, you know, flat to the way I've got it, want it in the guitar, and then I just lift up on it. And it's a small enough rod that you can put enough bend in it just with your hand. Now there's some bend in that rod, and you can probably tell that it rocks on the table. I can look down it and see a nice underbow in here. I have never really measured it. I just do it by eye and by feel. But just to give you a straight edge comparison there, oh, there's a full 1/8 of an inch in the lowest spot right there. And if you notice, that 1/8 of an inch comes in about the middle of the fretboard here, where you're going to need the support. And so when you tighten it up, that pulls this straight, and that's what straightens your neck. Off camera, I made this filler strip that matches the curve in this, and it goes all the way up to where the nut will attach. It goes under the peg head veneer and all the way up to where the nut will attach, and then it gets clamped down in here like so. And so we're going to go ahead and glue that in place. By clamping it like that, that forces that curve in there even more, and so therefore as soon as you tighten up that truss rod, it's going to start straightening that neck. This is only a test, but you can see the truss rod cover there that I'm planning to do for this guitar. Like I said, this is a test. This is just a piece of scrap walnut. It's not the final piece of wood that we're going to be using. But I wanted to test this stuff out here. It's a white filler is what it amounts to. And I wanted to test this to see if it is going to work. And I certainly don't want to test it on the final piece. I think this is supposed to dry pretty fast. This stuff is actually for fixing porcelain sinks. So, you know, I don't really know what kind of a material it is. That's part of the test as well. But I did want something that was pure white. So this guaranteed to be pure white. So we'll see. It's probably been about 20 minutes. This feels pretty dry and pretty hard already. I'm just going to scrape it off and see what it looks like. I thought I'd try scraping it before I tried sanding it just to see what that's like, because you know, there may be plenty of instances when I'd be in real tight spots and wouldn't be able to put it through a sander or something. It doesn't scrape too bad, but it takes quite a bit. Well, maybe you can see what we're looking at there. This, again, this is not the right color. The color will be more like the rosewood here, a little darker maybe. But I think you can kind of see what it might look like, and you know, it's gonna be nice. Once it's a little darker, that'll make the lettering show up even better. I'm ready to fit the fretboard to this. I think I want to do that before I attach the neck to the body. I'm ready to put the fretboard on this. I drove two little bitty tiny brad nails in this neck, one here and one here. This is an old school way of lining up a fretboard where it doesn't slide around. Yes, I am completely 100% familiar with the salt option. I don't use the salt option. It's just that simple. It's lined up. I mean, I've already tapped it with a plastic hammer in those two spots, and then that puts a tiny little mark. You can see the little hole there, I think, where I need to drill just a tiny little hole just to make sure this doesn't move. Trust me, see, if you look at that like that, that's caught on my finger. That's the way it catches on this, and it won't move. It's a perfect way to locate it and know that it'll stay right where you put it. You can't move it off of there. That's how good that works. And yes, it takes a tiny bit longer than the salt option, but this is an old school option, and I don't have to worry about what the salt might be corroding or, you know, any kind of corruption to the glue down the road. 50 years, I don't have to worry about that. And just to rest my case a little bit more, here's how good those two nails are holding. Look, I can lift the whole thing up like that. That's how good they hold. It's amazing how well they hold. And they're just barely protruding. And it's just a good way to do it. Well, there we go. It's all glued up. We got it out of the clamps, and now we just need to round it off down to the fretboard. A lot of people tell me to clamp this stuff up when I'm doing this and quit doing it freehand. Well, I work pretty darn fast, and I'm able to tilt it this way and keep the curve going, and it just works better for me. If you need to clamp it up, feel free. I feel real good about that. That feels nice and smooth. You can't feel the transition now. And basically I just got to do the same thing on this side. It shouldn't take quite as long. I've got it pretty well smoothed out. Now I'm just going for that final bit of feel and trying to feel where I feel, you know, just odd shapes or whatever. Trying to blend it, you know, just make it all feel smooth and round and symmetrical is a big deal. I just have a little scraper one of my viewers provided me. Once again, I've got the guitar mocked up. I have the neck angle set just about perfect. It's really ready for glue at this point. I was just double checking it, but you can see here it clears the bridge. It clears the bridge by about, oh, it's less than 1/8 of an inch. Probably 100 thousandths, something like that. The fretboard seems to be pretty flat, so I think we're in pretty good shape. So I think that's where we're going to have to leave the video, and we're going to get the neck glued on here, and the next time you see this thing, I would say we'll be putting some finish on it. I'm definitely getting excited about finishing this guitar up. I hope you are as well. Thank you so much for watching.